find. That way I can kind of show you guys as to how to color grade and mess with different types of footage, especially if it's like 8-bit compared to 10-bit compared to 16-bit RAW for the Red Komodo. And to show you guys some techniques how I've kind of gotten over working with especially 8-bit footage. It can be tough. Like Sony A7R IV, I remember having to like repair my clips pretty much because they were so bad. But I'll kind of show you guys some techniques and what we're doing. And yeah, let's kind of get into it. Let me grab some of these clips real quick. That way I can at least kind of go over this with you guys. Let's post this to Instagram real quick, let people know that I'm live. Pop that to the side. Let's grab these clips. And we got some clips actually we're going to color grade from my trip to Puerto Rico. This is actually unreleased content. We haven't actually dropped any of this yet. And some of these shots were actually in Florida and Puerto Rico. So the Florida shots, we didn't really have any lighting since I was travel shooting and I was just, you know, along for the ride. So we actually shot in like a pretty complex situation, which was this room, and it had like just this black backlight as far as like windows go. And I tried to be creative with it, but I'll show you guys what I mean here in a second. But let's see what other footage we can grab. That way we can kind of go over a diverse amount. And yeah, that way you guys can see how to mess with some footage. Let's see if I can find some of that Sony A7R IV footage, or maybe some GH5 footage. But I think the A7R IV was more difficult to work with. That way I can kind of show you guys as to, I guess, how I tackle these specific issues, you know? Let's see if I can find an exact example. Let's see. Forget the... Yeah, I might not have it anymore. Let's see. I mean, I think this is A7R IV footage. Let's see. Yeah, let's take this. Pop these into the program. Now I'll go ahead and switch to the view so you guys can see my computer screen as well. Boom, there you go. And yeah, let's start getting these clips in here real quick, and we'll see what we're messing with. And then, like I mentioned, this is going to be a mixture between some Sony A7S III footage, Sony A7R IV footage, and then some Red Komodo. Maybe I might go in the Red Komodo. That's more, I guess, easier to work with, so not as challenging. So that way, yeah. Let's see. I think those ones were okay. Yeah, I might not have that footage anymore. I don't think. At least as far as like this one really good example I had. Or maybe it was just longer than I thought. Pass, went through it. Yeah, cool. Alright, we'll start with this, and then we'll see what we're at, I guess, as far as clips go, and maybe come back to it. Alright, so we have these clips here. Let's go ahead and go through, and first things first, I want to go ahead and look for clips I actually really want to color grade. That way I can kind of show you guys as to what I'm going to do with it. Let's go ahead and take a look at this clip here. Like I said, super weird situation. We didn't really have much to work with. So like really what I was just trying to do is just try to think of a unique composition. All we really had was this big empty room, big window right here, and obviously like I think this is just completely blown out. Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's peaked and blown out, so we lost these highlights here. Not that it's too big of a deal, we'll kind of just lean into it. I'll show you guys kind of what I mean with that if we choose to color grade these footage, or this footage, and we move the couch back in front of it. But yeah, we'll kind of go through this, and I'll show you guys kind of what I would do for this type of stuff. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and go through, and I'm going to grab what's called a hero frame. So it's going to be a shot that kind of encompasses the feel of the video, and mainly what I'm looking for is just somewhere where I can see my subject skin tones and kind of just the totality of the image. That way I can see everything in one frame, and that way when I make my adjustments, you can actually see what's happening, in that way like you don't get kind of surprised when you do a grade on a specific part of the shot and you get later on in the video and it's something completely different because you didn't look at like the whole thing. But as we go through, we'll still scrub through it, and you know, while we're color grading it, that way we can kind of see what we're doing and how it's actually impacting our image. We're gonna go ahead and make a little bit more room here so that way we can see more. So first things first, what I like to do, a couple different ways, like I said before in another live, is kind of color management. You can do this a couple different ways. First things first, what we can go ahead and do is come into here and we can actually just change. We'll do this at the last node here. So we'll come into here, we'll type in transform, color space transform, and also I want to go ahead and make sure, because I am on my typical red settings here, but I'm not quite sure. Let's see. Management, yeah, so we're going to go back into here, Davinci YRGB, just Rec 709, same as timeline. Save, and then we're coming to here, and now we have our color space transform node on here. And this was shot on the Sony A7S III, so we're going to go ahead and select all that information, which is Sony S-Gamut-SIII 3, or S-Gamut-3 Cine. Then from here, we're going to go ahead and go S-Log3, which is the gamma. And then we're going to do output color space Rec 709, and this for gamma 2.4. And so doing that automatically puts our image in a more workable state, brings it more from that flat to a more natural, what we would see as far as like a standard picture profile. And that gets us in like a nice working realm. As I mentioned before, these highlights are definitely gone. They are super gone. No luck in saving them, especially since we didn't have any kind of lights to light the actual inside. So like if I would have had my lights, I probably would have put some lights off to the side, off to camera left and camera right. Maybe some grid boxes just to light the subject, and that would make him pop more. And also, since the darker skin tone, it would actually bring out more from him. But then doing it this way with the highlights in the background, it kind of gives more of a silhouette effect and that glowy highlight type of look. So we're gonna go ahead and kind of lean into that since we don't really have a choice as far as like how it was shot. And yeah, I'll show you guys kind of how I address it. So first things first, we're gonna go ahead and come into here, and we're going to select our highlights, our qualifier tool right here. And we're going to make a little soft ramp on this. I usually like to go around 15 to 20-ish. I turn this on up here as well in the highlights, just so that way I can see as to what it's affecting as I move it, and make sure I'm only affecting the brightest parts of the image. This is going to help us out in a couple different ways. I'll show you guys what I mean in a second. We're actually going to mess with some glow, and then also we're going to mess with... Sorry, let me start this recording real quick. There we go. We're going to start with some glow and then also maybe some highlight recovery and just see what that, I guess works out to. Like I said, these are gone, but I want to see what it looks like if we pull it back a little bit and, yeah, just see what it looks like. So if we come into here, we can pull back the highlights, but yeah, since it is gone so badly, it just looks kind of bad. I don't know. We'll leave it there. Kind of like the specular look more than the kind of faded highlight look, but we'll see. So for now, we're going to go ahead and turn it off. Next thing, we're going to go ahead and come into here and mess with our contrast. You can do this one of two ways. If you just come into here, you can do the contrast, like little knob, and just kind of mess with your contrast and the pivot and kind of get where you want it. That's one way of doing things. Or also, you can come into here for more of a custom curve type of look and make a S-curve, and this gives you more, I guess, freedom as to what parts of the image you want to actually add contrast to. So let's say we come in here, we can actually take down the shadows close to the blacks. And then from here we can also come back and push a little bit more light into the midtones, and that's going to help bring out the skin and still give us that more contrasty look, but still push a little bit more light into that area where the actual skin tones are, so that way he doesn't fade completely out and there's just no detail. We're going to pull back the brights just a little bit. Nah, actually, it's so far gone. We're not even going to mess with it too much. So something like that I'm kind of happy with, but I still want a little bit more, like, I guess, like, just punch to it. Yeah, there we go. So we're pushing more into that, and then from here we're going to go ahead and make a little bit of a knee, I don't know what they call it necessarily, but a little bit of a pivot of the actual, like, blacks, like the super darkest parts of the image. That we get more of a faded look, and we can actually even mess with this a little bit more, which is called low soft. And this kind of just helps raise our shadow level in order to make sure that there's no like super dark parts of the image. It's more of like a taste as far as it goes, but still can be more of a technical aspect as well, making sure you don't actually lose that data. But one big misconception I think with photo and video color grading is that everybody thinks that, like, okay, every single shot I have to have the highlights and every single shot I have to have the shadows completely protected. That's not the case 100% of the time. When we're looking at like color grading, we really want to, I guess, get a balance, but also portray an emotion, you know. And with that, it's more so showing the audience what they really need to see in the frame, and not necessarily everything. So, like, if I'm looking at this shot, the detail, like over here in the curtains, the detail over here, like on the couch, over here on the sides, and also the window, aren't really important. They're not telling the story. They're just more so of a set decoration. And so with that, it's not 100% important to get everything all in this shot. Another good example, let's see if I can find one actually. Let's see, we'll go into clips. Let's see. Yeah, there's lots of good stuff actually. There's like this is all Puerto Rico footage and stuff too. So like we got some really cool stuff to work with. Let's say actually like a nighttime shot, right? So let's see. We got a nighttime shot. This is at the taco truck. I just had the Sony A7S III. I was just messing around with the shooting and such, just to see as to what we could do and just how good the camera is in low light situations. So this is nighttime shot. We're gonna go ahead and actually come back to our first node, and we're going to take our color space transform because I don't want to just do it over again, and we'll just drop it on. But let me see if I can find a better clip that really demonstrates this. Cool. We'll just drop this onto here. Add in our nodes, disconnect this, but I want this at the end. Disconnect this as well. Disconnect, maybe. Okay, we're just going to do this a different way, I guess. There we go. And plug that into there, and then from here plug that. And so that way this happens at the end of our actual node structure and not the beginning. And then that way, yeah, we can kind of work on a different workflow. So first things first, what I'm noticing is that the actual shot is completely not white balanced. So first thing I'm going to do is actually completely white balance this. I think that's another misconception too with color grading. The biggest part that I think people miss is balancing the image. There's color correction and there's color grading. Color correction is more so the sense of balancing your image as far as exposure, your white balance, your contrast, and that kind of stuff. And then from there, though, you can build your look through color grading. Or actually, no, it's completely even separate from there too. There's color grading and there's like look development and stuff like that. But balancing is like the building blocks of what you're doing. Lots of people will have like a clip like this, and looking at it, it's super green. Like it just has like a big green tint to it. The white balance was not on point. We're looking at the whites here. Bits of it look okay. Like this part here, maybe that's getting hit by a different type of light. But then lots of the actual skin tones and the shadows and stuff are just in a more of a green environment. So what we're going to go ahead and do is take it and actually balance it. So we're going to go ahead and come into our second node. And what I like to do actually is the offset wheels. Of course, I kind of go through and like mess with it a little more, but we have this here. So if you hover above our whites and we see over here in the scopes, yeah, so over here in scopes, it's going to show the red, green, and blue channels, and they're all separate. We see how like there's 3 different circles, and you can see this if you come into our settings over here. And then I think it's display qualifier focus. So yeah, just settings, display qualifier focus, and then from there though, you're going to get this where when you move your cursor over colors on your image, it will show in the actual scopes, and from there you're able to see what's supposed to be where. So we hover above our black points. We see that our blacks are not too far off. It looks a little bit more red greenish than the blue, and then our whites are definitely more red green-ish than our actual, image. So we're gonna come in here. We're gonna mess with this. First things first, like I said, it's very green. We're gonna pull back the green and see if we can get the balance. Right now, I'm just messing with it and looking at my scopes here to get a good balance between it to see if we can get that pure white. Still a bit more red, and then we're going to go through and actually clean this up as we go, but right now we're just looking at our actual highlights and our white points, so that's decent, but then I also want to go ahead and actually add some more contrast to it as well, just so that way I can actually see what I'm doing and make sure that everything is actually in a good workable point. Mess with this. So yeah, now it's more in the blue realm. So we're going to go ahead and actually come into here, take back our highlights too. So we're going to go ahead and go back into our qualifiers, take this up, get just the brightest parts of the image so that way we can take away that, just that highlight. Yeah, there we go. So that way it kind of takes the punch out of it a little bit more. But now what I'm looking at is more of a different balance. So like right now, this is our balance from our offset. It works pretty good in balancing it, but then also there's lots of different lights hitting it, so now we're going to go ahead and actually mess with our lift, gamma, and gain as far as our colors go in order to balance it more correctly. So we're going to take out some of the blue from the shadows, some of the green from the shadows. Let's see. Right now I'm just looking at just the black points just to see if I can get it as close as possible to a like true black. Alright, and that's pretty good. And then from there, though, lots of the skin tones are still in the greens. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is, and you can check that actually here too, if you come into your vector scope, we can hover above the skin tones, and we see on the actual vector scope that the skin tone indicator is way off. We have here, if you come into vector scope style and stuff, or no, what is it? Settings, where is it? There we go. So here, and then from here in the vector scope area, we have show skin indicator. That's going to show us this line here on our vector scope, and that's going to give us a good feel for where the skin tone should be. So like the center mass of the actual skin tones should be on that line, and we see that it's more towards the green, which I did just say that it is greenish. So what we're going to go ahead and do is come into here and pull the midtones back a bit as far as the greens go, and try to push that more towards that area, so that way we can get some good skin tones and push it. But as you see, we're going there, and then of course the everything else kind of goes out of balance, so it is like more of a push-pull type of thing. So now we're going to go ahead and pull some of that red out of the shadows, and this is a balancing act. That's why it's called, you know, color balancing, you know. That way we can go ahead and get this as smooth as possible and see already. So if we're looking at our vector scope, we see that more towards it, and we could probably even push it more towards that, so that way the center actual mass is right on that area, and that's pretty decent. And we'll come back into here and pull some of the reds out of the shadows, and then mess with the greens a bit in the shadows as well, just to get it to a great point. There we go. So that's pretty balanced as far as that goes, and that gives us more of a true representation of the actual shot. And then also looking at it, my first point that I was mentioning is the blacks. So when we're looking at the image itself, we're going to go ahead and go back into our waveform. This information back here is completely worthless, so we're not really necessarily worried about this information here. You know, like there's nothing for the image, it's not our actual center point. These guys here are our actual center point of the image, and this is what we're actually looking at as far as the clip itself. But let's go back to some other more interesting clip as far as the original shot we were working on. Let's see, we're going to go back to when he was pointing at the camera, if we could find that bit again. Alright, there we go. So we're going to go have something like this. I wish I could find... Oh, there we go, there we go. Oh, that was just a point. Alright, cool. We'll just do something like this. So we see our skin tone still, we can actually mess with it. And then we can kind of go over what we're going to do with the shot. So first things first, what I want to do is add more style to it. The image itself is semi-balanced, but what we're going to go ahead and actually do is just make sure that it kind of pushes it more into the realm of what I want. Noticing that the shadows are a little bit more blue than I would like. So if we look here, I'm not sure if you guys can see it through the YouTube compression, but one thing I like to do as well, and eyeballing it isn't always the best case, but what you can do as well, especially if you're not working on a color calibrated monitor, you can come into here, you can create a power window over your shadows, and then from here we can actually see as to how it correlates with the footage itself and where it's sitting at as far as a balance. So we're looking at it, and it looks like it's a little bit more green. And so we're going to mess with that a little bit, and then boom. So we're going to mess with it, and then once we do that, we can see that this line becomes more of a white line, whereas if we push it more blue, it goes blue, and then that goes way wonky, you know? So your goal is to get this kind of balanced, and then get that smooth white line. That way you know that it's actually color balanced properly as far as your shadows go. But that doesn't mean necessarily, if you just get your shadows right, that the entire image is going to be completely balanced. That just depends on your lighting and the whole situation. So for that, what we're going to go ahead and do is take away our mask. Turn this back on, and from here, we're going to go ahead and look at that. I like that look there. Then from here, let's hide these clips so we can get some more room. I do want to play with the contrast a little bit more. So we're going to, like I said, we're going to lean into that brightness. I do not care about the actual detail in the background. I like to add some glow into here, so we're going to go ahead and add a node after our color space transform, and we're going to go ahead and label this as well, just so that way you guys can see. CST, color space transform. We'll label this, we'll go contrast, if I could type, contrast, and then this is our balance node, or our primaries is what they call it. Primaries or balance node. Oops, I spelled that way wrong. There we go. Alright, so we got our primaries, and then from here we're going to go ahead and go into our glow. This is where I like to add to like lots of videos. I mean, obviously, like right there, like there's the staple effect. I mean, maybe if I'm going for something more angelic, that could work, honestly. It completely blows out the windows, gives more of a complete glow. And then we can honestly even double down on it if we wanted to. We could add another glow, but instead of just a regular glow, what we can actually do is my little technique I like to do on most of my videos, which gives more of a filmic look. So I like to go into here, change the actual blend mode to soft light, and then you'll take that shine threshold and just kind of drag it all the way down. This will give a more general hazy kind of look over the image, so you can see kind of what this one's doing by itself. And it gives more of like a soft look overall over the entire course of the image. But we're going to go ahead and dive into both of these, and then I also want to go ahead and actually pull this back a bit. So I don't want it to be that crazy, but just a little bit of flare so you can see what both these glow nodes are doing. Just something like that. Then also what I'm going to go ahead and do, and I like to do this as well, as far as like kind of like shaping my shot. So when we look at the actual shot, let's see, so 80805. So when we look at the whole shot, he's generally centralized in the middle of the frame the entire time. Reason being for that is because I really wanted to just isolate the room. Like I said, we didn't have much to work with in this. It was just really just a blank room and a couch, and then we moved the couch for some shots and had the curtains. The curtains were pretty interesting because they were just red with the red walls, and yeah, I could work with that. We could do something with that. So we're going to go ahead and kind of shape our light here. And what it's going to do, because I don't like the outlet on the side, I don't like what's on here, so this information is kind of useless to me. So I'm going to go ahead and actually create a radial filter, make it pretty wide. Then from there we're going to soften that like crazy, invert that so that way we're only affecting the outside parts of the image, and we're going to mess with that a little bit more, just so that way we're not really messing with our subject in the center, because we don't really want him to be touched too much. Then from here we're going to go ahead and go into our curves, and we're just going to drop this down, and you can play with it as far as like where it is, and then we're going to come back into here and just mess with this a bit, just so that way we can try to help bring the center of the frame just to him and take away more of those distractions on the side, and that way we get more of a look. So this is the look we're building so far. Next thing I'm seeing is that the reds aren't really the red I really want. Looks like it's more into a pinkish realm. So what we're going to go ahead and do in the after the CST is come into here. We're going to go into our curves, and we're going to go into our hue versus hue, and we're going to select our reds. And we're going to go ahead and see. We're just going to click the red down here at the bottom and just see where it grabs. Hopefully it grabs the actual shirt and the windows. But if it doesn't really grab that well because the scene is so dark, I'll show you guys some different ways how we can actually correct that and fix it, and yeah, just make it look better. So we're going to go ahead and mess with the hue, and as we crank this, we can see it changing the hue of our image. We could do a lot of different things. We could push it into a purple realm, which is cool, but obviously we run into the issue since reds are tied to skin tones usually. It kind of just destroys the whole image. There is possibility for us to actually go through and key out the skin, but since the room is so dark and it is 8-bit footage, I don't believe it would be a very easy key to make. So what we're going to go ahead and do is reset that, reselect our reds, and actually we're going to take this in a bit, just to affect less of the actual image and see if we can get a really good clean key around just the red bits of the image and less of that orange skin tone. So let's see, we're going to move that, and right now I'm just moving this over this here. You can see that this is the mass color of the actual image, which is the reds, and we're going to mess with the hue. We're going to crank it really crazy, and see, yeah, even doing that just helps get us more of the skin tones out of the actual image, but we run into issues as far as like some of this with just the way the colors are interacting. So still we'll keep it kind of smooth, and we can mess with it as well as far as like the actual gradient of it, if we need to kind of pull it back. But I'm just going to mess with it. I want a red. I like the red, but I just want a specific color of red. Less orangey, more red, you know? Let's kind of push it more into pink. And actually we might even get this more through the luminance change. So just barely any changes, honestly. It might even be honestly where I need it to be already. Yeah, because either way I pull it, it's kind of going more towards somewhere I don't like. So what we're going to actually do is go into the curves, reds again, pull it in. You know the drill. We're going to try to narrow the changes that it's making on the skin tones and the surrounding areas outside of just the reds. And we're going to go ahead and put this back on the area. And we're going to do this. So what this is doing is actually changing the luminance of the reds. It's going to darken those reds and push it more into a deep dark red. Usually when we look at like films back in the day, colors are very deep, you know, like when we're looking at digital video, they're not as deep. They're just more bright, vibrant, kind of airy, I guess. But then if we do this, it kind of pushes it more into a dark, deep realm and makes it look nicer. Also, I like the blues. The blues are a center color, as well as the goldish yellows in his shirt. We can actually do a lot to make that stand out. I'm going to go ahead and actually go back to, let's see, we're going to actually do a couple different things. So we're going to add one more node as far as after the CST. Delete this one, I don't need it. Whoops. This one. Alright, and so right now what we're going to go ahead and do is just look at the overall image. I'm going to add a little bit of a look into it. This is going to be more of like the color grading aspect, and this is just how I do it. There's tons of different ways you can actually achieve different looks in your video footage. I like the offset way of doing it. It kind of just helps visualize it as I go. So looking at it, it does look a little bit more bluish, so I want to push it more into that golden realm. So I'm going to go ahead and take away some of the blue from the image, and then that way it kind of goes more into the gold realm. And yeah, so we get lots of that blue taken out, and that actually helps us with our reds as well. It's going to help bring those reds into more of a nice realm. And this is our grade so far on how we're looking as far as our image goes. Then from here I need to mess with our blues. We'll label these, so we'll say reds. And then also I want this to work in, like, together, right? So let's say I add another node here and I start just messing with the blues. So let's say I come into here, I select the blues and just mess with it or whatever. It's going to be working after my change to the reds, and I don't really necessarily want that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is come into here, we're going to go ahead and go into add node and add a parallel node. What this is going to do is make these two nodes work together before it pushes on that look to our next node. So that way these two, if there is any overlap between our color changes, it will go ahead and actually work together rather than after each other. So like Davinci Resolve works in a, I think, like I gotta think of the right terminology, but it's like a it's a node-based structure, obviously, but it's like a so let's say what's the easiest way to describe this? We'll turn all this off, right? Then from here though we have this node here, or actually let's turn on our primary node, right? And our CST, just so we can see as to what we're doing. But our primary node, let's say we're looking at this, right, and then we jack up our highlights like crazy, right? We jack it up like crazy, and then we go to our next node, which is our contrast, and we try to recover those highlights. It works a little bit, honestly. It actually works better than I even thought, probably just because of CST. So let's actually go past this for the example. Let's see. So we'll add another node after the CST. Primaries, we'll go ahead and actually just raise up those highlights like crazy. Then we'll go ahead and go into it afterwards. So this is what the image looks like afterwards, and like we'll just dramatically go like crazy. Now the way the system sees it is that this image is sending it to the CST. The CST is interpreting what the actual footage would look like if it was shot in the Rec. 709 color space and gamma 2.4. This is what the image is perceiving on this node here. So if we try to come into here and take down the highlights, you see how now we're not able to recover any of that information because it's already gone through our actual color grading. So any changes you want to do to exposure or highlights or noise reduction or anything like that typically happens before your CST on the most raw version of your shot. That way you can save all that information and it's not all lost, because if you do this and like, let's say you jack up or whatever, and then like later on down the line in your node structure you try to recover that information but it's already gone in prior nodes, it's gone. So best thing to do is always just work as far as like beforehand, I guess, before you're actually even making those changes. You want to make all your recovery and balance changes before your actual structure. That way everything is safe and everything is controlled, working off like the most raw image of the actual shot, whether it be in a log profile, raw, like as far as like red komodo, red whatever, or like RE or whatever else, black magic shoots raw as well. And that way you get the cleanest image of your actual, or cleanest image you can get out of your camera, So yeah, it's pretty decent. So now we're gonna go ahead and actually come into here and mess with the blues. What's the best way? So we're gonna go ahead and actually come into here. We'll do hue versus hue. We'll see. I don't really want to mess with the hue too much of this. I do like where that blue's at, but we want to make it pop as much as possible. So I'm going to mess with it and put it into a little bit more of a, like a lighter blue. It's more of a greenish blue. We'll put in more of a lighter blue. Then from here, though, I'm going to label this, we'll say blues, just so we can keep track of what we're doing. And this is our look node. Oh, that can't type. I swear I'm so fat finger when I type, it's crazy. We'll do this. We'll say glow, glow 1, and then we'll say glow 2, and we'll do radio. Alright, and then we'll label this highlights. Highlights, boom. So this kind of keeps us organized in what we're doing, and like I said, this is before and after what we're doing so far. We'll hop back into the blues. One thing I do want to change is our luminance of the blues, and also our saturation, just to see what else we can kind of pull out of it. And yeah, kind of get it more of the ballpark of what I'm looking for. This is always finicky. I really would love to get like a actual like Black Magic color panel thing, whatever, that has like all the knobs and stuff. That'd be super nice to work with, maybe someday. So what we're going to go ahead and do is mess with luminance as far as the blues. I'm going to brighten it up. Just make sure it's not destroying our image anyway, but I definitely want to brighten it just to make that pop more. We're going to take this and pull it out just a little bit more. We want this to be as smooth of a transition as possible. If we look here, like in our actual graph, there's not much other color in the video outside of the reds and oranges and yellows, minus the actual blues here, and so that's why this is such a small representation of the actual graph. So we have that, and that helps us bring it more into a complementary color. When we're looking at colors, we definitely like it to be complementary. So like there's this thing called the color wheel. I don't know if I have it on here. Let me see. Let's see if I can grab that real quick. Color wheel. And then we'll just download it real quick. If I can find a decent one. Save image. Desktop, save, okay. Alright, so when we're looking at this here, this is our color wheel. This is going to show us, like, obviously, like, complementary colors. So when we're looking at this, the opposite of this blue is more of like a reddish. So these are complementary colors as far as this goes. So when we're looking at it, we can try to get this as close as possible to these exact colors. So a good tip you can actually do is you can pull this into your editing program, and then from there you can actually look at it and create a palette. So you can actually get this as close together as possible. If we come into here too, there's actually an effect for that. I forget what it's called. If it is, yeah, color palette. So what we're going to do is drop in another node, palette, and this gives us the actual colors of our image. That way we can go ahead and see as to what we're doing and how it's affecting it. So what number of colors, so we can mess with this. I'm not too versed with this tool, to be honest. So this is me just kind of messing with it. So what mid-tone region, color palette. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to get the exact colors out of it, but this is our color palette as far as what colors are represented in the image. I'm sure there's ways to actually get this a little more correct. Yo, what's up, fam? Thank you for popping in, man. Appreciate you. If you have any questions, man, feel free to ask too. Thank you for stopping by. How you doing? Hopefully you're up to something creative. Love when people get to be creative, you know. Today we're just doing some color grading, so thank you for stopping by. So yeah, so back to the blues here. So we're gonna go ahead and, like I said, make that as smooth as possible so that way we can kind of push this to where we want it to be. And then the next thing I see is our golds here. We definitely want to bring more out of that in order to just add more to it. So we're gonna go ahead and add another node. Let's see, so we need this to be a parallel node, so we're gonna go ahead and add node, parallel, no, we need add node, corrector, so we'll just add this, and then from here though, add this to this, and then this to this. Why is this working? Let's see, so take this, add node, add parallel, no, alright, see, I'm messing this up, let's see if I can get it. Doing good, love your content, keep it up. Hey, thank you so much, man, really appreciate that. Let me know what I can do better too, man, if you want to see something specific as far as like any tutorials or any, yeah, just anything, man, as far as like any videos go. But thank you for stopping by, man, really appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to ask. Would love to answer some Q&A on here right now too. Just trying to figure out how I can get this node in here. I'm not quite sure, honestly, without just completely redoing it. Let's see, so we'll take this. Alright, forget it. We won't even mess with it because I'm not 100% sure. So what we're going to go ahead and actually do is just mess with it in here. Since luckily the gold is a little separate from the blues, we'll just mess with it in the same area. We'll mess with the luminance. We want this to be maybe a little bit brighter. but we can see it is messing with a bit of the image, so we're going to widen this just a little bit, just so that way we're not losing as much detail and getting more breakage, because if we really push this, we can see we're getting lots of like breakage in our yellows, and it's not a clean look. You know, we don't want that, because especially as we go through and the image, if it's like dancing, like you'll see it dancing, like if it's actually broken, that's not good for the image. Let's see, let's go ahead and come into here. We'll definitely mess with our saturation. Definitely want to boost that up a bit just to make it pop more. Yeah, see, so like now it's all about micro adjustments. It really is just micro adjustments to kind of get it to where you want it to be. Then next thing I want to do is mess with the hue of those yellows, because I don't really like that tone of it. But we're going to go ahead and see what we can do, since it is in such a tricky spot, and see what other type of yellow we can kind of pull out of there. So if we push it more, it goes more greenish, but we can also see it's affecting the skin tones, so we really got to be careful with this. We don't really have the power to do too much, but we can push it a little bit more down, and then that way we get a little bit more out of that. Boom. So this is our look so far. Looking at the image, I'm trying to think of what else I really want to do with it. There's not much you have to do. Just remember, you don't always have to push things to a crazy level to get a good color grade. One thing I'm looking at is the skin tones right now. They don't look exactly right to me, so we're going to go ahead and go back into our vector scope and hover above the skin tones. It's not bad, honestly. It's actually pretty close to it, but it is still a little bit green, so we'll go ahead and go into our primaries. Take a little bit of green out of the midtones, and yeah, there we go. Push it right into that realm, so that way our skin tones are as accurate as possible, and this is close to our finished look. So if we look at the actual shot, boom, we have this. And obviously, like I said, there's no lights. If I did have the option to have lights here, I definitely would have had a light on him. We could do more as far as like tracking shots and like kind of do more, but then this kind of gives us more of a dreamy look. But one thing I'm noticing too is that down here in the reds, we have some of that dancing. And that could be just noise, or that could be our, yeah, that's definitely our luminance as far as this goes. So let's go ahead and go back into here. Luminance, and what we're going to do is just pull this back a little bit more and widen that, so that way the drop off isn't as crazy, and hopefully we can try to get as clean of a key as possible. And I think that's just more so noise right there. But now we're running into some issues as far as like around the hair and stuff, but it's not too bad. It's not too noticeable, but we might want to even pull back the luminance back just a little bit, so that way it's not as crazy of a difference and doesn't look as crazy on our image. But boom, we got those really deep reds, and we're going to go ahead and actually see how that translates to our other clips in that same room. So we're going to go ahead and just select our other clips, copy that. Since this is the same exact lighting, it should kind of move over pretty easily. That one's a little bit different. It looks like it was shot whatever, but once that look is built too, you can actually come into here. We'll go back into our waveform. Looking at it, it's crazy overexposed. So we'll just pull back the exposure to bring it more in a balance of the other shot. And then boom, we got that. But like I said, this room was pretty boring. There wasn't much to it, and I was just trying to make what I could out of it. But then boom, so with our glow too, you see how that adds a really nice look to it, as far as like the highlights goes. So I mean, it could be just like this or that, you know, so like it just gives it more of a look. Since that window's blown out anyways, you might as well dive into it. And what we could do as well, I mean, the highlights are kind of blue. I think this image actually just has a little more blue overall in it. So what we can do is come into our primaries. Our highlights are a little bit blue, so like I said, the lift, gamma, and gains, so this is our shadows, midtones, and highlights virtually. Then that way you can mess with each individual channel to kind of like balance it and push and pull in different realms as far as your red, blue, and green channels to get your image to where you want it to be. So coming in here, we'll pull back the blue overall. And that puts us more in a balanced realm, and then from there, though, we're going to go ahead and pull back those highlights a bit in the blue to give us more of a warm look, and then boom, we got a nice look in it, and that looks fire. Alright, so let's go ahead and go to a different type of shot. We have some nice shots. I think there's some actual fireworks shots here, too. This was when I was actually on a trip out in Florida with the homie Boomy. We've done lots of video works together, but yeah, this is pretty cool. So we actually got some cool fireworks shots. I don't think it's anything to brag about. I don't know how cool it is, honestly. I can't remember. This is a long time ago now, it feels like. So this footage is kind of like revisiting it. But I think it is shot in slow motion, so that's pretty cool too. We're actually at the dance club, so we're gonna skip that footage. I don't know all that footage of what could even be shown on here, so we'll go ahead and actually check out the Puerto Rico footage. That's what I really want to mess with. That way we can show like some vibrancy, some colors and such. I don't know why it's taking so long to pull up. Yeah, see, this is the good stuff. All right, so this is where we get the nice footage, man. This is out in Puerto Rico, man. Like this was a really cool experience. Minus it just being so hot. It was so hot, so humid there. But wow, was it beautiful. It was incredible experience, to say the least. So first things first, like I said before, we're going to go ahead and come into here, do our transform, color space transform, change it. I don't know if I have it copied still, so we're just going to go ahead and actually redo it. But like I said, a couple different ways you can actually put it into that realm. This is just the way I like to do it most times, just to make sure that it's proper. So you come into here, you get to know your actual input color space and gamma that it was shot in. This was shot on a Sony A7S3. So we're going to select the Sony S-Gamma 3 Cine, and then from here though we're looking for S-Log3. Boom. So that helps us put it in a realm, but we still also have to select this. So our timeline output color space is Rec 709, and then also Gamma 2.4. So we're looking at as far as this goes. Whoops, just yank that out of there. And that's going to put us kind of in a realm of what the actual camera saw that day. It's still kind of flat, but I'll show you guys how to, obviously open this up and make more of it. So we're going to go ahead and go down, look for our hero shot, and just find a frame I really like that's sharp. Let's see. It's crazy. This was like, I think the day before our flight or the day of our flight, and so this is us just literally walking around just trying to capture like what else we could do. And so we just walked down the ways away, and then luckily found like this cruise ship, this bridge, and I loved it, man. Like everything out there was just so nice, man. It was so nice, but just so hot though. Like I was over here dying. I don't handle heat that well at all, and I was dying. It's crazy. But so looking at the image, first things first, I want to go ahead and actually add some contrast. We can go into here, and we're going to add a little bit of a custom curve. We see that it is very overexposed, so actually first things first, what I'm going to go ahead and actually do is come into here. We're going to pull back our exposure just to take it back a bit. And luckily, since this was shot in S-Log3 and properly actually balanced and the lighting was pretty decent, we do have a very well exposed image, and that gives us the actual ability to push and pull things as far as what we want to do with the exposure. So go ahead and pull that down first things first before we even add contrast to put it into a realm that we're good with, and it's kind of just balancing it. Then we'll go back into our curves, and we're going to mess with the contrast and make a nice little S-curve in order to push some more contrast into our image. And we're going to make it a little bit drastic. I'll show you guys what I'm doing here in a second. So we're going to make it drastic, and obviously we're looking at it and we lose a little bit of detail in there, but we're going to bump up the midtones just a bit, and that will help bring that out a little bit. But since it was such a bright day, we're not going to get all that information regardless, unless we had some sort of reflector or whatever, but like I said, it's not as important to get everything perfect. It's more so getting what you want in the image to be shown in its best light, what you want to show the audience, So far, with our changes, we have contrast, our little bit of exposure change, and our CST, color space transform, to get it to this point. Looking at it, I know that the sky, I want to change to a more dramatic blue, but we have lots of blues in the image, so if I go in here, and let's say I push the blue saturation, so let's actually see a couple different ways of doing this. So like I mentioned before, it works as based off of the node previous to it. So this node is working off of this node's working off of this node, and as you create your looks and make your changes through Davinci Resolve, you want to make things, I forget the correct term, I think a downstream workflow or upstream, I'm a little confused on that myself, but you want to make it as far as like doing your changes non-destructively. So anything you do on these nodes prior, like on your 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, the first nodes that you do, and as you go through your node structure, it will continue to build off of what you're doing, and that's why they have different things as far as like layer nodes, parallel nodes, and those nodes will help you kind of mix your image a little bit better as far as like what you're doing. So let's do this two different ways. So I'm going to mess with the blues before our color space transform, and I'm going to mess with our blues after our color space transform. That way we can go ahead and see the difference on what it actually does in working that different way. So we'll come into here, actually we'll go ahead and just come into our color mixer, our color warper, sorry. We'll go ahead and come into here and select 12 just to give it more range. And yeah, so see, so before the CST, if we click our blues over here, you see how it's barely picking up any saturated blue? That's because if we turn off our CST, virtually what the image is actually working off of is this image here. So this is what we see, obviously, because of, you know, what we're looking at as far as like the actual output. But if we turn that off, this is the actual image of what it's working with currently. Or another way you can see that too, if we turn on the highlight, no, that doesn't even work. Oh yeah, no, yeah, it should, yeah. So highlight. So boom. If you click on this here, up on the top left, it says highlight. So this will show you what you're working on as far as like just the individual node. And then also, if you're looking at power windows, qualifiers, this will actually show it more up front to your face as far as what you're working on. So clicking that, we can see this is what the actual image that we're working on. So there's not much color. There's not much color to actually even work on or grab in this image. And that's why we might want to do it on this image instead, because there's more color to it. So then if we come into here in our color warper, click the 12 dots and click on it, still the same actual result, so never mind. But if we click here, yeah, we're getting like a little bit more color out of it, but still not much, honestly, as far as saturation goes. So maybe we can honestly even push that more. But I'll show you the difference as far as what we're doing, and that way you guys can see the difference, and that way I think that will show it more. So coming in here, we'll do our color warper, and actually, I don't even think color warper might be a good choice for this. So we're going to go ahead and actually just come into here. We'll hop into our hue versus saturation, and we're going to see what we can do as far as the blues, and pushing that up. And okay, so we're actually pretty lucky here. So like the blues in the sky are different than the blues in the water. This is picking up more of like an aqua greenish, whereas this is more of like a typical blue. But I do want to mess with this to push it more into a tealish type of realm anyways. So we're going to go ahead and grab a pick here too. So yeah, it's definitely more bluish greens, and we can mess with this to get it to where we want it to be as far as like our hue goes. So we can even pull that back a bit. And then we'll kind of come into here. We're going to widen this up just a bit more, just to make that transition as smooth as possible between all these blues. Then from here, I also want to change the hue of the blue up top. So we'll come into here, widen this up a bit, and we're not going to mess too much with the aqua greens. I think that's pretty decent. We will mess with this sky, so we're going to go ahead and push it more into a blue realm that I like. I like that. Kind of fits the Puerto Rico vibes. But it is pretty saturated, but we'll worry about that in a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and take this away. Actually, no, we're not going to take this away. So we're going to actually copy this, and then we're going to turn this off, and then pop that same adjustment onto here. And honestly, looking at it, we don't see too much of a difference. I don't see too much of a difference as far as doing it. So here it looks like it's more pushed, whereas here it looks like it's more natural, honestly. So we're paying attention more to like the blues up top here. So this is what your color adjustments look like after. Let's see, actually let's just do a screenshot. So we'll do a still. Then from here though, we're going to go ahead and turn this one on and grab a still and come into here. Let's see, we need to compare these somehow. Let's see, no idea. I'm not sure how to compare them, honestly. Gallery, but then if we look up here, we can see that the blue for sure on the actual the adjustment before the actual CST is definitely pushing the blues way more than the changes afterwards. And color grading is all about subtlety, so I'm going to stick with the actual blue changes after the CST, and that way we get more of a natural saturation look as far as like the boost, and then also the hue change. It just helps blend that all better and makes it look nicer. Looking at it though, I do see that it is more on the blue side, and this is Puerto Rico, so we want it to be warm and like inviting and that type of thing. So colors portray emotion, and when we think about that, like I said, the color wheel before really explains that too. It just, you know, like not even a color wheel, not as far as emotions go, but colors do show emotion. My bad, spam call. It's just been going crazy. But colors show emotion, so cooler images tend to show more like sadness and like whatever type of look, whereas like warmer tones is more of a happy-ish, summery vibe, you know? But then it also depends on your scene and what you're doing. So we'll come into here, we'll actually take this away. This is our blue changes, so we want to actually balance it, kind of build our look from this. So we're going to go ahead and actually create another node, and this could be after our color changes, and this will be our look. Whoops, caps lock, look. And then we'll come into here, this is our blues. And And actually, I wonder if we could do, let's see, add node, add parallel. Because I really do want, let's see, add node, add parallel. Okay. So this would be representing of all of our colors that I really want to mess with. So we'll say greens. And then, I don't know, maybe reds. But we'll see when we get there. We'll see if we need to change these up a little bit or whatever. So look, I want to go ahead and actually change it up a little bit. But we can actually do that through our balance. First, we'll go ahead and go back to it. And the blues are, or the shadows are a little bit blue. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of that blue out. That's going to naturally help push us into that more summery vibe. I also do want to raise our lift a little bit, just so that way we can make sure that none of that information is lost in the shadows and just a little bit cleaner, but then also we can mess with our contrast a little more. And just push and pull that a little bit just to give it more of a look. Alright, cool. So what we can do as well is I'll come into here. Let's see, I kind of want to add more saturation to the image. Let's see, so we're going to go ahead and add another node. We'll go into our right click. We'll change our color space to HSV, and then we're going to actually take off channels 1 and channels 3 like that. And then from there though, that's going to allow us to do a natural saturation kind of boost to it. So we'll do this a couple different ways. So let's say we come in here and we just crank up the saturation. This is going to affect the image overall and just push more color into everything, right? What if we don't want that? What if we want more of a clean push of color? This is that tip here, and then from here we can just come in here, label it HSV, and this is changing the color space like I mentioned before to HSV, and then from here though we're taking off channels 1 and 3, and that way we're only working on the saturation channel of it. Then from here we can come into our gamma, and we can boost the saturation up a bit to where we like it, and we get more of a natural boost to our saturation. And so if we look here, this is with that technique, and we see like the skin tones aren't super pushed or whatever. We see some weird like colors in here. We'll fix that through our balance, but this makes it look more natural. Whereas if we take this off and look our typical saturation, we see how there's more like reds in the skin tone. Skin tones just look too pushed, whatever. I mean, if we pull it back a little bit, it looks alright, but it's just not as natural of a gradient. Even these reds over here are just kind of pushed to a crazy realm. Whereas if we turn this on, everything is more balanced as far as like raising the mid-tone saturation too, because we're only working right here in the gamma, so we're just raising that saturation alone. So we'll go ahead and actually come back into here. We're going to mess with those blues a little bit more, now looking at the actual image. Let's go ahead and take this over a bit. Take this over a bit. And we're just looking at our blue sky. We just want that to be as, you know, Caribbean, I guess, as possible. Just as bluish, greenish as possible, rather than that typical, you know, stark blue, you know. Alright, so looking at the image, let's go ahead and actually add some more pop to it. So we're going to go ahead and take this note away. We don't necessarily need that. So we're looking at the look. So we want to, like I said, make it feel more warm. So we're going to go ahead and take more of the blues out overall of the image. And then boom, it's kind of pushing us more into that realm. But not too far. We don't want to make it look too crazy. So just subtle, very, very subtle. Then I'm going to also add my glow. I love the glow. Really gives a just pop to it. That's just the add blend mode composite type. So we're going to go ahead and actually change this to our soft light. Looks like nothing. But then from here though we're going to drop it. And actually even a technique I've seen before. Let's see if we could do that real quick. So we're going to go ahead and just take that like crazy. Or actually let's see. I wonder if we go back. We're going to our qualifier. We're going to make a high soft around 20. And then we're going to pull this back so it's only affecting the more dark parts of the image. Drop that shine threshold. And so it's only affecting the dark parts of the image. And what that's going to do is help us with our contrast, but also push more of a, I guess like a flavor into the video footage. So you see what that's doing to the image. So it's really darkening our darks, but like kind of like adding just like a little soft glow throughout the image. And we can come in here, we can actually mess with our gain and gamma to push that more as well. and that gives us more of a sauce to the video, you know what I'm saying? Make it look nice. So we come in here, we'll label this, we'll lay glow, label, balance, and then contrast. And we have our CST. That's gonna drive me crazy. It has to be all caps. CST. Alright. So overall, this is our color grade of this image. Since he is mostly in the middle of the shot, we could add like a radio gradient, you know, to it. And that's pretty dope. That's actually looking really good. One thing I do notice though is the greens. The skin tones I don't think are actually balanced either, so we're going to actually go into our vector scope and look at that. Yeah, so there's still more on the greenish side, so we can actually mess with our skin tones a little bit more and push those to a proper realm. One thing I like to do with that, so that way I don't actually mess with our overall color grade, is to just qualify the skin tones. So we're going to pull this back a bit. We'll do it after. So we're going to go ahead and come in here, and we're going to qualify our skin tones, and just so you can see what it looks like, this is what it actually looks like when we go through and select these. And right now we're just looking for the cleanest grab of just the skin tones. So we're going to go ahead and come in here, and we see that we're picking up lots of stuff as far as over here. We're not getting, like, I don't think is, yeah, it's full neck. So we're going to go ahead and come into the add, and we're going to add a little bit more into it and get more of those skin tones into the actual qualifier. But let's say we come into here, and let's say we just desaturate this just to show what we're looking like. Take this off and look at it. And so, like, looking at his pants, we can see some of that artifacting, and this just helps you visually see. Obviously, we would never have the skin tones that push, but it helps you visually see where the actual issues are. So we see some artifacting here and such. So we're going to go ahead and actually revert that, take it away, and clean up that key a little bit just to make it as clean as possible. So we're going to mess with our saturation as far as the shadows go, take that out, and already that's going to help the pants and the beard get a little bit more clean. And then mess with maybe the luminance a little bit. And lots of this stuff is just more of a push-pull, just to see kind of where it goes, just because each image is completely different. You just want it to be as clean as possible. So that way we can come into here, we'll do a little bit of a blur radius to make it as soft as the change as possible, and then also a little bit of a denoise. This will help with our artifacting of the image and just make sure that things are clean. But now looking at it, we're going to pull this highlighter up. We're just looking at the skin tone indicator over here, and we're going to try to balance this. So we're going to take some of the green out to push it more into that realm. Boom. So really green skin tones, pushing it more into that red vibe and getting that more accurate as far as the skin tones go. And it's still not right on the line, but looking at the monitor, I mean, we could push it if we're going off of it. Let me see. Because even looking at that, my monitor might not even be calibrated, honestly, as good as it could be. So we could honestly even just push it more into that, but on my screen it looks super red, but we'll see how it ends up. But we can push this here because the scopes never lie. So like if you really do not have a calibrated monitor, the scopes do not lie as far as like how the actual video footage is being interpreted. You know what I'm saying? That's how you can get the most accurate way of seeing what's going on with your footage through the scopes. I've seen colorists actually go through and color grade video clips solely off of looking at the scopes. They can make an actual clip look like another clip. And that's where things are really crazy. So doing that, boom, we got our skin tones way right, but then also I want to mess with our greens a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and look for a nice clip with the greens. Let's see, so we're going to go ahead and select this. We'll come into here, we'll do hue versus hue, select our greens, pull this out a little bit to make it softer. And then we will mess with this, and then for now, honestly, I'm going to come in here and just put the skin tones back to what looks right for me as far as my monitor goes. But then we'll show, I guess, like what it looked like actually afterwards too. But greens, and then from here, we're going to go ahead and actually mess with the hue to get the greens where I want them. Oops. So yeah, we can push more up here, and this helps make the greens less bluish and more like green. We can see that if we zoom into the shoes, and that puts it to where the actual shoes really actually were. And we will widen this up a bit more, and what this is doing, this is just going to make that transform, or like not transform, but the the change off from this hue change just smoother, so that way it's not as jarring and we don't have much artifacts. But looking at it here, you can see that it is messing with the water some. So we don't want that because that will be a problem. So let's come into here. We're going to actually take that back a bit so we're not affecting the water as much, hopefully, if we can get a nice key without it. But it looks like those colors are super tied. So yeah, we might have to do something else. But we'll play this. See, I'm looking at the water down here. It doesn't look too distracting, so it might be good. Luckily, all the attention's on the artist, on the bridge, rather than the water. Alright, so what else do I want to do with this image here? One thing I do want to do, we have our glow, we have all of that, so what I want to do is just bring the viewer's attention more in. Since there is a lot to look at, we can do this a couple different ways. I like doing this sometimes, so we'll make a little radial gradient, we'll make it very soft, and once again invert that, come into here, we'll go into our curves, and we can just go ahead and darken this. What this will do is just darken the image, making it a little bit more drawing into our subject, and we can do this one or two different ways. We can do it that way, and that just makes it more, I guess, neutral as far as like the image goes. Or we can also come into here and do it more drastically as far as like, you know, maybe something like that, and then that helps, you know, darken, I guess, the edges of the frame and helps bring your attention more into him. Alright. So overall, this is our look. A couple more things I want to do to it. Let's see. So one more thing we could do is add some grain. I like grain. It adds a little more grittiness to it. Now we're all chasing, I feel like, just the filmic look, you know, like the cinematic look of video. I put quotes around it because everybody says, hey, yo, this is so cinematic. Yo, cinematic. Cinematic. I found this nice video the other day. I wish I could remember who was saying it. But they were saying cinematic, like, is just making a pleasing image, you know? And that could be anything, so just make it pleasing, you know, like really just make it pleasing to the eye. Try to be just observant of what you're doing as far as like when you're making changes, because you don't want to push too much into the image and just make it overall bad. You just want to make it nice, you know, balanced. Saturation is not crazy. You don't need to push anything too crazy. Honestly, the best color grades come from subtlety and not just pushing it into a crazy realm, you know. So I like this 60mm archival print, but I also like the 35mm 400T. Looks like that's not as much, so we're going to go back to the archival. Add a little bit of that into it, that way we have a nice little look to it. So let's go ahead and actually add some halation too. This is just like some additional things I like to do towards the end of my footage, is the glow aspect of it. Then from here though, grain and halation. These are all things that are part of film stock that we have in digital programs now that actually help, you know, make it look decent. What we're going to go ahead and actually do is just come into here. We can take the overall strength down. I'm still messing with my technique as far as this goes. We can take the strength down, and then from there though, what this is doing is actually going over the highlights and adding like a little red fringe around the highlight areas. I don't know if you guys can see that on the YouTube compression, but adding a little fringe towards it, and that way, that's what actual like film cameras had in the back in the days, and film cameras actually had that just naturally perceived highlights with halation over it, and that way now we kind of add that. And some videos have it more than others as far as like how it goes, but it's all more of like a personal taste on what you want to do for your color grade. What I'm going to actually do is reverse this though, put this back to normal. It's obviously too much, but we're going to go ahead and actually add some low soft, and we're going to see if we can just affect just the brightest parts of the image and not just the overall image. That way we can kind of keep a strong halation on there just for the actual highlights of the image. So we'll zoom in, we'll look at it, and we're going to raise the strength, drop it. So yeah, it's kind of doing its thing, kind of not. So we're going to pull it back just a bit, pull this back. There we go. So still, I think there's probably too much strength, so we'll pull it back just a bit too. Pull this back. Cool. And that is giving us a little bit of a look. So this is before and after of our color grade. And then from here though, we do have a replicatable clip as far as this goes. Let's go ahead and actually just fix this though, because like I said, I have to get this right. So we'll go back into skin tones. We'll take that green out, push it towards the right realm. And yeah, that gives us some actual accurate skin tones. I have to mess with my calibration on my monitor, I swear. On my screen it's showing red skin tones, but I gotta mess with this so it shows actual correct colors. And that's the importance of actually having a color calibrated monitor, because it will show you correct colors, and that way you can get the most out of the footage, you know. But yeah, so this is what it looks like. Hey, that's clean. And so now we have this. Luckily, since lots of these clips were shot out in just bright daylight, you know, like we have lots of power to just copy and color grade to these other surrounding clips. And so we just select them, and then from there, though, it's all about balancing. We can definitely go over shot balancing as well. If you guys want to know more about that and how you actually get your clips correct, you know, like, and like consistent throughout it. But then it's just me going around shooting some B-roll. Super cool, man. Puerto Rico was a vibe, man, for sure. It was just so hot, man. It was so hot. I can't even describe it. We had to walk everywhere too. It was pretty rough, man. Puerto Rico was absolutely beautiful. Let's go back as far as we can. Let's see what other footage we have to play with. I don't know why it's going so slow. There's one shot I really, really want to look at. That way I can show you guys that shot too. And yeah, anybody in here, if you guys have questions, feel free to ask. I'm live on Facebook and YouTube right now, so please, if you guys have questions, definitely feel free to ask. That way I can yeah, help you guys out, give you some pointers, especially if you guys struggle with color grading. I know color grading can be pretty daunting. When I started out color grading, I really just was like, I would have like this, like, I think I downloaded like a bunch of LUTs at a time, and would just like cycle through them. So I would just literally go through like the list of LUTs and just click, 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 until one looked kind of decent, and then from there, though, I just rock with it and kind of add my own taste to it. But that doesn't work really that well, because over my projects, I would just have inconsistency, and just things were just not looking consistent overall. This was cool. Little, what, iguana, I'm pretty sure. But they were quick, so I had to be super quick and super chill. But that was pretty cool that he was just out here chilling. This was him on the bridge beforehand, before I even got up close enough to him. And yeah, it was just pretty cool, man. They were just out in the wild, just running around and stuff. It was pretty tight. Little school bus, that's pretty tight. Oh yeah, he actually was able to go on it and hop off the school bus. We just asked. Or actually, no, we didn't even ask. We just hopped on that thing. It was just on the side of the road. We just hopped in there, so that was pretty cool. Let's go ahead and refresh this just so I can see it naturally. Let's take a look. So this is just some shot with a graffiti in the background. Running gun videos are super fun just because you're able to just challenge yourself and just see things just in the environment and just really push whatever you really want to as far as it goes. You can just play with different things, see something you like, boom, stop over there, shoot by it. Direct your artist, whatever you need to do. We got some water, we got some statues. That's kind of cool. Our blue change is a bit much for these clips though, so we're going to definitely have to dial it back and mess with our balance, and that just comes into balancing. But that's actually pretty cool. I didn't realize I even had this footage here. I gotta go back and like really look through this footage to see what I actually want out of it, you know, not just for the music video. This is pretty cool. I think this was the Capitol building, I want to say. We got a cool performance in front of it too, if I could find it. But I'm not quite sure. This might have been before. Yeah, there we go. So before we even went down. Like, tell me that's not a banger. Like, come on. Like, that's fire, man. This whole location was so fire. It was so cool going out there with him to shoot some of this stuff as far as Puerto Rico footage. Turn the saturation way down. We don't need that crazy. This blue seems to be pretty nice. So we're going to pull that way down because it is just way too saturated as far as that look goes. And then looking at the skin tones, we're no longer selecting them because it is a little bit off, so it's not 100% correct on this, but we can go through and obviously clean that up. And just try to get more of a nice key out of it. Take it out of the shadows. Yeah, this is a little tougher just because of lighting, I think. But not too important for what we're doing. We're just kind of messing with it. My side is looking a little bit red, so we'll just pull the reds out a bit. Maybe raise the shadows a bit in there. And then we get a little bit more of that detail. I wish I had a reflector right here because sun was, I think, backlit I'm trying to see. No, actually, no, it was just straight top down. But if I had a reflector, I definitely could have held it here, like up to the front right or front left of him, and could have bounced some light back into him, and that could have given us more detail and more of a poppy look. You know, when we see music videos shot anywhere outdoors, usually, like, and it looks really, really nice, they're either using lighting, so really powerful lights to actually give you that nice soft look on their actual talent, or reflectors, like really big bounces or whatever, you know, to bounce that light, sunlight back into the talent. You can do a lot with reflectors as far as just controlling your light. You know, controlling light's everything. Let's see. This is not cool, man. This is super cool looking back on this footage. Lots of, like, just beautiful stuff, man. Like, this is such a cool place to be. But like this, the bugs were so crazy. You could see them flying everywhere. It was almost unbearable at times. So even looking at this shot, so if we want our color grade to actually even carry over to this, what we have to do is just rebalance it. So it's obviously very red. We could pull those reds out and just try to find a balance. It's still pretty green, so we'll look at this and we'll just try to balance it out. Might be too much for it though. Let's just reset that as well. Yeah, probably just too much for this clip, so we'll just actually skip it. Let's see, a different type of clip we can color grade. So these are all outdoors. Let's hop into some of this footage. This is some Sony A7R IV footage. So this camera itself is 8-bit footage. This doesn't have as much latitude as far as the A7S III goes. And so this will be a good chance to show you guys as to how to color grade it. Let's see if I can even remember as far as to what profile. I want to say I was shooting in S-Log2, I think, or maybe Cine D, but we'll see if we can actually do a CST on here and get it kind of to a realm. Yeah, see, I can't even tell you what I was on. S-Gamma 3, maybe. I don't know. We're going to go ahead and just see if it has S-Log2. I think it does. Yeah, S-Log2. And yeah, see, already it's kind of just more difficult to work with. But we're going to go ahead and see if we can save it. I want to show you guys just how I would work with this footage. We'll go through it a couple different ways, just so you can see it. So first things first, we'll do our CST. I think that's correct as far as the changes go. We're going to go ahead and come into here. We'll save those highlights first thing, so we'll add a little low soft. We'll change that so it's only grabbing the brightest parts of the image, and because it is super bright, we're going to go ahead and pull those back a bit just to take the sting out. And then still overall, we're going to probably take down the overall exposure of the image, just so that way it's not as crazy. But looking at it too, the shadows are pretty dark, so I'm going to go ahead and mess with this. And this is just our balance right now, right? So we're just balancing the image, just trying to get the shadows to a good point, the highlights to a good point. Then from here though, we can go ahead and actually add more contrast as we need it. But then looking at it too, it is definitely more red. So we're going to go ahead and pull some of that out and just try to balance it, get it to a good point. And right now I'm looking at the skin tones and a white t-shirt. The white t-shirt is a good indicator, so we're looking at it and we can actually see if it's actually white or not. And I'm looking at my scopes right now. And let's see if we can pull some of that blue out the highlights. So that's close. I'm pulling blue, pulling green. So we see over here on the right side, we see that circle. Once we get it pure white, we will see that just be a white circle rather than 3 individual circles. Pull the blue out just a little bit more. Hey, nice. We found the foam roller. That's what's up. My back has been hurting, man. That thing disappeared in our house and I could not find it, but we found it. We got the foam roller back. Now I can crack my back. And I don't know if y'all mess with the foam roller, but that thing, ooh, it feels so good. Just letting your whole back crack, you know? Alright, let's go ahead and take this, mess with our contrast. It's a very flat image so far, so we're going to go ahead and actually mess with this. We'll pull down our shadows, boost our midtones. It's a little too contrasty for me. See, this is what I mean as far as like this footage just being weird to work with. But we're going to do our best. So this is more of a balancing act. Don't know. Let's see. Let's go ahead and actually take this off. We're going to go ahead and do this a little bit differently. I just want to see what we can do as far as take this off, take it off, put it through. Alright, so right now we're just going to build a whole separate tree. Yeah, the phone roller. Thank you for finding that, by the way. I appreciate you. Now I can finally crack my back like crazy, man. I love cracking my back. I know it's probably bad, but it feels so good. Actually, I had an issue the other day. Cracked my thumb a lot, and I ended up like maybe over pulling it or overextending it and really messing it up for like a couple of days. But now it's kind of back. The range of motion isn't fully there. It's like kind of poppy, but whatever. So for this, we're going to go ahead and actually come into here. We'll just add some saturation. Actually, we're going to go ahead and do this a little differently too. We're going to go ahead and try this technique here, this HSV technique, to see what better saturation we can kind of pull out of it rather than pushing the whole image too crazy. So do that. Color space, we're going to put it HSV. Then channels, we're going to take off the hue and the, I don't even know what the V stands for, value. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but I know S stands for saturation, H stands for hue, and then V stands for whatever. But we'll come into here, we'll up this, and then one thing we could do to also see what we're doing with our saturation more is change our contrast. And we'll mess with that, push that into a realm. And so yeah, lots we have to work on this image to get it to where we want it to be, but we'll get there. So I like this change better, honestly, than the other change. So we're going to remove that. We're going to copy our highlight data, save that there. Boom, get rid of that. Take a look at this. Just make sure we're not crushing it too much, because if it is overexposed and we're trying to save it, it's doesn't matter. Like, you can't save it. Once it's gone, it's gone. And that's just part of the hindrance of working with 8-bit cameras and such like that, and just low dynamic range cameras, you know. We'll try to find a good hero shot. I like this. Just gives us more of him, and then also some of the car in the background. But I wonder if I can get a shot with me more off to the side. There we go. There we go. So we can see that car really, really nicely. So looking at it, it is more on the blue side, so we're going to go ahead and actually mess with the balance. Take the blues out more. Oh, we're still on the HSV. We're not on a balanced structure right now, so we don't need to mess with that. Alright. So now, let's see. Let's reset that so it doesn't mess with anything. Then we'll come into our offset, which is our balance node, and we're going to take out the blues because it is just way too on the blue side. I like that orangish look. But one thing we're going to do down the line too is a like a kind of a corrector node. So one thing you could do to just save stuff, what we'll call is log wheels. So if you make this, I like to do this as like a kind of a cleanup node. Actually, even we'll just name it cleanup. Cleanup. If I could not fat finger it, clean up. There we go. So clean up. Then from here though, we can go into our log wheels. This will help you make more micro adjustments towards cleaning up your shadows and highlights. So once you have your look all together, you can make a cleanup node later on, and this will just target the darkest parts of the image and the brightest parts of the image as far as your shadows and highlights go. So looking at the shadows, it doesn't look too bad, but honestly, you don't really want to go off of your eyes. You really want to go off of the scopes. I mean, I think for today's sake, I probably will just go off my eyes because that's what I'm looking at. But for actual grades, you want to go off the scopes. Then from here, though, we can go into highlights, and we can look at it, and it's not really balanced, but it's kind of close. But we can mess with our offset. And actually, even for this, we'll come into, let's see, shadows. Mess with that, raise it up a bit. I'm just looking at the scopes, trying to get this as balanced as possible. Alright, right about there is okay. Then we're going to remove our power window. And yeah, so not really a big adjustment. It looks like it was just more warm. So we're just pulling a little bit more of that warmth out of the shadows to give us a proper black. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and actually look at the whites as well and see what we can do to get our whites into a clean realm also. So we will make another power window. I don't know where it's at. Alright, there we go. So turn it off. Come on. Why is this not working? Oh, because that window still exists. So let's just delete that. Oops. I don't know what I just did, dude. I smacked it. Went to a whole different clip. Alright, let's go back. Okay, so that's gone finally. So let's go ahead and select our highlights, like a good portion of it. and that way we can go ahead and see what we're doing. So yeah, we're looking at that and it is definitely off. So we'll go back into our log wheels and mess with our highlights. So it's definitely more bluish. So we're going to take some of that out, take some of the red out, and right now we're just pushing all these to try to get it as close as possible to a nice solid white. I think that's as good as we're going to get it, so we're going to go ahead and take it off. And so yeah, even looking at this, within that power window, you see what we're doing here. So we're looking at it and we're seeing all this shirt here. I mean, obviously by just the eye we can see that it's like bluish, purplish. But doing that and targeting our highlights, we can see that just how much more white we can bring out of that shirt and clean it up and get it more, you know, solid as far as that goes. So we'll take it off, and then just with our cleanup node here, geez, look at that, just our cleanup node even adds more to it. What did I do? Did I change the offset at all or anything? Maybe darkening and brightening it, I don't know. But we can see just how much cleaner the highlights are, how much cleaner the shadows are, and just how nice that makes the image look. Then from here though, we can go ahead and actually add our typical stuff. First things first, what I want to go ahead and actually do is change the hue of the reds. So what we'll go ahead and actually do is come into here, we'll go into our hues. I'm going to select the car. The car looks more like pinkish, reddish, you know, so we're going to see if we can find a actual like red color. So even doing that, it takes more of that pink out of the hood, pink out of the sides, and pushes us more into the actual natural color of the car, which is the red. Then from here though, we can mess with the luminance. I don't really want to mess with it too much, honestly. One thing we can do though is kind of shape our light. I think for the most part, no, he's kind of all over the place. So for this situation, I would maybe make a radio gradient, but then like move it with him. And you could track it with him, or you can just go like, oh, once you actually go into the scenes, you can select what you want. But that's looking pretty clean. That's looking pretty clean. Let's see, so we'll go ahead and actually add some glow to it. And we're going to do that same technique we did last time on that last clip as far as just selecting a certain portion of the clip. So come into here, change it to soft light, but then I do want to change that shine threshold all the way down, and then we'll go ahead and go into our qualifiers, and we're going to make a high soft, around 20-ish, and then just drag it so we're only affecting the darker parts of our image and not the entire thing. That way when we look at it, we went from this to this, and it just helps bring in that little bit of an extra touch. It's adding some contrast, but also like a little bit of a glow to it. And then we can also come in here and mess with our gain, gamma, and such to hopefully balance that out and just give it more of a look, you know. Take out some of the saturation because we don't need extra saturation from it. Yeah, and that's looking pretty nice, but we could still do some more cleanup. Honestly, we're going to probably copy this, make another node. We're going to copy, paste it beforehand, delete this. So that way our cleanup node will happen afterwards, and we can clean up whatever extra, like I guess, gunk or color it's putting places. But let's see, we're going to go and actually refresh this, reset that, reset that. I don't want it to be pushed too much. Yeah, we'll just leave it like that, but we still will leave it like this, so that way we can make sure our shadows are cleaning up whatever's being introduced into the footage with the glow. You know, we don't want to add in stuff to make it worse. You know, we want to add in stuff to make it better. Then from here, though, we're looking at our highlights. We'll mess with those too a little more, just to make sure we're getting a nice image. Boom. Alright, so that's our cleanup node. Then from here, though, I want to go back into our balance. We're going to actually raise the shadows a bit. Oops, oh, that's the HSV. That's why you got to label them. So HSV, pop that here. Let's do label, bow, label, contrast. What is this? Our glow. And our cleanup. Cleanup. Alright. Let's drink some water, man. I'm thirsty. Oh, man. Alright, so looking at the clip, there's honestly some issues in it. The shirt's showing some issues. Let's see, is that because of the glow? Yeah, so the glow is actually introducing more artifacts than I'd like. So we're actually going to reset that and not actually do it that way. Just because it is breaking the image, and that's just due to that 8-bit footage just being a little bit too finicky. So we're just going to go ahead and do our classic like little glow adjustment. We'll come into here, mess with the blend a little bit. And then we're just going to still control more of where that's going. Alright, and so looking at the image too, I just see lots of like just purplish stuff and like the just purplish stuff. Like I don't like that at all. So that's that 8-bit Sony A7R footage. That's like one of the big issues you gotta work with or work around with this type of camera, is just trying to clean up certain things. So what I can actually do here, we'll do like a little bit more of a drastic cleanup. So coming in here, we're going to qualify the whites. So you can see what I'm doing. We are just trying to grab as much of this stuff as possible. A little bit of stuff in the windshield, a little bit on the head. But what we'll do is we'll try to minimize the stuff outside of the shirt and only bring in that without affecting everything else around the image. And hopefully we can try to get as clean of a key as possible. But once again, 8-bit footage, you can only do so much. But we could do like a mask around the shirt if you wanted to try to like track it, you know, and like just affect that only. But we're going to come into here, we're going to denoise it, we're going to add a lot of blur to it as well. That way these changes aren't anything crazy, because what I'm going to do is just make that, and I'm going to drop our saturation. So what that's going to do essentially is just take out all of the gunk in his shirt. There's still some on the side over here, but all that purple like weird stuff or whatever in the shirt, and give us a true white shirt, because this is not it. You know, you don't want all that weird stuff in the footage, you know, and even now still there's some areas that are not in it. So we can play the clip, we can see what it's looking like, and we can try to come in here and add more of that. But we don't want to really affect the outsides of the image, you know, as much. Just the shirt, so we're going to have to mess with that in order to get it cleaned up. And we're just trying to get it as close as possible. Like I said, 8-bit camera, so we really don't have too much room to work with, but that's close, man. I mean, there's still gonna be issues as far as like, you know, you can see it on his face a little bit, like it's like a little blue tinge or whatever, you know, like in like bits of the shirt as he goes through that are more in the shadow areas. But with an 8-bit camera, it is very difficult to get it out. Another way we could go about it would be to make a node. We could turn this one off for now. We can come into here. We can do our saturation, and we can actually select. So there's not much blues in the image, honestly. So what we can actually do is come into here. There's really no blue in the image, so we can actually come into here and lock off our section, and we can just drop the saturation in this area. And actually expand that more. And what we're doing virtually is just removing all the saturation out of it. Even that's not going to be good enough. Yeah, honestly, this is probably the best way of going about it. Just the qualifier, and then we're going to have to deal with whatever like things show up. Maybe just even be selective as far as like the scenes that you want to do like with it, or even if people notice it. I doubt it. They might not even notice it. And that's just more of a thing. But even looking at now too, yeah, so you gotta be careful, because like even this, the 8-bit footage is still picking up bits of the car, and we can't have that. We can't have bits of the car going out in saturation. So we can try to narrow down again, but it's just 8-bit footage. We won't spend too much time on it. It's alright. And sheesh. One thing we could even do. Let's see. Let's try to do this. Let's see. Clean up. We'll go into our log wheels again. Maybe take out some of the reds. Introduce more green. Nah, it's not working too good either. Yeah, I don't know. Probably qualifier. That's honestly the best thing I could think of for it. Yeah, cool. So that's that shot here. One thing I do notice though too, balance-wise, it is just a little bit too warm or pinkish. So what we can go ahead and actually do is come into our midtones, take the red out of the midtones, just to try and balance it out more. Nice. Alright, that's pretty decent shot. So this is our color grade before and after. Nothing too crazy as far as changes go. One thing I would probably do as well to add to it is, like I said, that radial gradient. That way we can try to isolate our subject and get more of a center viewer attention, you know what I'm saying? So we'll come into here, we'll change this. Drag that down. We're looking at the corners. We don't want to push it too much, but we want to push it enough to make a difference. We'll even drag this down just a bit. And this just helps bring our audience's eye straight to that center of the frame. That way when he's performing, we get more attention on him. Nice. That's clean stuff. That's clean stuff. Alright, cool. So let's go ahead and actually look at some other clips here. I don't think we had too much more out of it. We can copy the grade, and it kind of translates, but even this is a little bit off. So what we could go ahead and actually do is select the clip and try to match it. So looking at it, this one's definitely way warmer, pinkish than this one's. We're going to have to balance it. So we'll go ahead and select it. Minimize that for more room. Come into our balance. And take the red out. It is more so me just eyeballing it. You can also look at your scopes as well, and that will give you more of an accurate representation of what you're doing. I like to eyeball it sometimes just to see if I can actually get it, and then kind of use my scopes as well to just help push it to that round, make sure it's for sure where it needs to be at. And this actually looks even more saturated too. Yeah, definitely more saturated, more goldish. So let's see if we could take some of this out. Maybe pull back the saturation on this a bit. Okay. Balance, we're going to take out some of the green. Take out some of the red. Alright, that's kind of getting there. It seems a little bit more contrasty too. And contrast, you have to balance all your shots with contrast as well. So we're looking at the contrast of the shots to try to get that as good as possible. We're going to go into our cleanup, log, try to take some of that green out the highlights. I noticed there's lots of green in the highlights. That way we can try to push it to a more neutral area. Shadows seem to have a little bit more reds in them too. So we'll mess with that. Alright, and then that kind of gets us more balance. It still seems more on the pink side, so we can come into here. Balance, let's see. We want to remove some of the red, so we're going to remove some of that. But we need to go back into our regular. Alright, that's pretty decent. Still some issues, I mean, as far as like shadows go. That's pretty decent. We're running into lots of issues though, I think, up in the top of the image. I'm not quite sure what's causing that. But you can turn these nodes on and off to see what's actually causing it, because we don't want it to be destroyed or destructive. Looks like it's the HSV in it. So we're going to go ahead and actually reset that. I'll select this clip again to compare it and see if we can add in some of that saturation. Let's go to color space. Oh, we're going to reset this completely. I just reset everything. So change this, channels, channel 1, channel 3, and we're going to add in our saturation again. Not too much though. We don't want to destroy the image, but that gives us a nice little thing. And actually, even looking at it now, so we're going to go ahead and actually take some of that red out again. And this will happen too, where like you'll be working on a shot, and now I like this one better. I think that actually looks better. So now I'm going to do the opposite and try to balance this one out to this one now. So looking at it, let's see. So maybe more. Alright, so let's change the contrast a bit. Pull back the saturation a bit. Just a little bit more on the blue side now too, so we're going to go ahead and go into our balance. Take out the blues. That's pretty decent. That's pretty close. Nice. All right, that's balancing shots. All right, guys. So before I go, is anybody else in here? I'm gonna go and switch the camera back to my view. So if anyone else is in here, take a couple minutes. You know, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate that. I'm trying to go live more consistently, but if you guys have any like actual questions or different video tutorials you guys would like to see more in depth about certain techniques, please let me know. I would be happy to make that and teach you guys my techniques on how I color grade. Color grading is super subjective. It's more so like what you like, but also making sure that you present a quality image. You know, it's like it's how you tell a story, I guess, or enhance the story. So you want to like obviously light your footage the best you possibly can, and then from there, you also have the ability to color grade and hone in your look, your desired exposure, and all that kind of stuff too. But yeah, I don't see any questions popping up anyways, so I'm going to go ahead and actually get off. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate the time you guys take to actually watch me color grade. It's super humbling. It's super cool. I like it. And like I said too, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer all of them. And join us next time for our next live. I'll actually try to be posting a schedule next time, so that way I can be more consistent and let you guys know when I'm going to be live streaming ahead of time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.